nationally, we've made amazing progress with offshore wind, with lots of developments in fixed bottom turbines. So in waters that are no deeper than 60 meters. And the majority of the sites developed so far are actually quite a bit shallower than that. But unfortunately, the sort of regions like the Southwest haven't been able to benefit from local turbine deployments because it's amazing how deep it gets very quickly off the shores here. So you go out to the North Sea and you could be 130 kilometers from the shore and Dogger Bank, sort of average depth of about 30 meters, that far out. You go just a couple of kilometers out from Falmouth Bay near where we are and you're over 60 meters depth. So you couldn't deploy the existing turbines. But floating turbines could unlock lots of new sites, and that would bring all sorts of benefits to all sorts of different areas. It would really help with the sort of generation mix because it's very rare that the whole country is becalmed by wind. So if we can get deployments in the southwest, when it's windy down here, it might be calm in Scotland or vice versa. So we could have a much stronger sort of integration of wind into the national grid going on that. Now, locally, we've got lots of businesses who would benefit, so it would really support local industry if we could have these developments. Some are already helping with offshore wind, companies down here designing foundations for fixed bottom and things, but there's lots of other turbine or industries that could support floating wind turbines and lots of ports that would help as well. So it would really be a boost for the local economy going forward.
Do you think people will be supportive? There's controversy over solar farms and fields, in the countryside. Will people welcome the idea of a floating turbine relatively bobbing on the horizon near to where they're out on the beach, for example?
So one advantage of floating offshore wind is they could be easily positioned further from the shore, so less of a visual impact from the beach or from the coastline. And we've had developments, the proposals for turbines off the coast of Dorset, for instance, were stopped because of the view from the Heritage Coast, and that could have been a great deployment of wind, but it was the visual impact that stopped that. So with floating wind, we can go further offshore and have less impact on visual impact, but also less impact on, we can be more careful about where they go for fishing at work or for ships passing through, those sort of things. So it could have a lower environmental impact altogether.
What kind of technological things need to be investigated? Because a lot of this money was about bringing the cost down, wasn't it? And just trying to make the tech just usable and financially sound.
So we have made great progress in reducing the cost of fixed offshore wind, but we need some similar innovations to reduce the cost of floating wind going forward. At the moment, it's almost counterintuitive in a way that these things are so stable in the water, just relying on a float and ballast to keep them upright. But at the moment, they use quite a lot of weight to do that. So there's quite a large buoyancy and quite a large ballast. So things that we could do to reduce the weight of the turbine or improve the structure of the support structure could really reduce the cost of that. So reduce the amount of material we need and therefore make them cheaper to manufacture and deploy going forward. But once they're in, they could be great in terms of operating costs and actually cheaper to install as well. You don't need sort of fancy jack-up barges with great big hammers that pile the foundations into the fixed bottom turbines. You could have almost simpler towing the turbines out to site and linking them up to anchors, that sort of thing. And similarly, if there's a maintenance issue, costs could be reduced because you don't have to get a sort of fancy boat with a big crane to go and service the nacelle. You can actually tow it back into port where the crane exists already and do the service work there in calm conditions, out of the strong winds and the waves and those sort of things. So the whole life cycle could be an awful lot better for the floating wind turbines.
What's your estimation for timescales? When will we finally see the first one launched off our region's coast, do you think?
So we are a few years off, I think, local deployment. All of these schemes do take quite a bit of time to develop anyway, both in terms of confirming the site, looking at the bathymetry, the depth of the water, details of how we do the anchors, and different bits still being worked out, like things like the best options for grid connection. Where would you run the wires back from the floating wind turbine to land? So there's still quite a bit of work being developed at the moment, being calculated. There's also a bit of work perhaps on, for instance, things like the port infrastructure. So helping some of the ports get well set up to develop these technologies. So the concept's been proven nicely. It's working well in Scotland at the demo site there. But I think commercial deployment is still a few years off down here.